So what would it look like under a Biden administration for Jews and for Israel? Our guest right now is Rabbi Uri Pilichowski. He's an educator and political commentator. He lives in Mitzpeh Yericho and is an activist who works to strengthen the U.S.-Israel relationship. Welcome to the show, Rabbi Uri Pilichowski.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for having me.
All right. So you gave a talk last night on the AliyahNetwork.com. And by the way, I advise people to go to AliyahNetwork.com and sign up there if it speaks with you, if it has anything to do with you. And you were saying that the Biden administration is not the end of the world for Israel, and that Biden, in fact, was a person with extreme empathy, and that under his presidency, if there is one, he would support Israel in the United Nations, and Israel wouldn't suffer too much. And again, I can't say that I agree with your assessment, but I do want to bring to light what you said because I found it fascinating and optimistic. So please.
Well, I think that we have to recognize that there's a long-standing, strong United States-Israel relationship that's supported by partisanship by both parties. And Vice President Biden, in his 47 years as a senator and as vice president, has been a strong supporter of that relationship. I know that we all like to focus in on the Obama administration's policies that weren't friendly towards Israel, and many of them were not. But that doesn't characterize who Joe Biden is. Joe Biden has been a strong supporter of Israel. Everybody likes to point to his confrontation with Prime Minister Begin back in 1980. But they don't realize that after that confrontation, Joe Biden voted almost 100% down the line with Israel throughout his entire career. The Obama administration supported Israel at the United Nations throughout the entire 8 years with the best record, and only abstained once with the horrible, horrible abstention in that resolution. They should have vetoed it. But other than that, the Obama administration supported Israel. I'm not making an argument for the Obama administration. I'm as big of a critic as they come. But it's unfair and frankly not honest to characterize Joe Biden as not a friend of Israel or anti-Israel, and this is the end of the world. The Trump administration was the most supportive administration of any that Israel has ever enjoyed. That's I don't think you could ever make the argument otherwise. But I don't think that we should start, ripping our shirts and woes to us over the next 4 years and what we have to expect.
But if I said just forget everything else and just look at him rolling back the Iran deal, Dayenu, Iran wants the destruction of Israel. By the way, they want the destruction of the big Satan also, America. Just that he wants to do that they can, God forbid, get the bomb, that they could, God forbid, attack Israel, and that they are the sponsors of Islamic terror all over the Middle East, including against the United States. Isn't that enough itself not to be afraid of a Biden administration?
Well, I think it's important to keep in mind that, and I was a critic of the Iran deal and lobbied hard in the Obama administration and members of Congress and the Senate to make sure it didn't get signed, and there was a big disappointment when it was signed. But keep in mind that President Trump also committed that within the few weeks after re-election, he would also enter a deal with Iran. Everybody's in favor of a deal with Iran. The question is, what are the terms of that deal? The only other option is regime change, and no one's advocating for regime change. Not even Prime Minister Netanyahu is advocating practically for a regime change. So to say that we're anti-deal that's not sensical and also not reasonable. But the question is, what kind of a deal? And over the next couple of months, we're going to have to work really hard to make sure that members of the Biden administration don't just give up the farm for a deal. So that's our work. That's up to us to now make sure that in terms of a new deal are much better. He's not going to return just to the deal as it was and just simply enter into the deal. There's going to be a renegotiation with Iran. And that's for us to really fight hard and to make sure that the Biden administration understands what we need. And that'll be up to Prime Minister Netanyahu and AIPAC and other places that have the ear of the president.
And you know what? I have so many things that I can present to you why I believe that it's not going to be good under a Biden administration. But I really want to give this time to you to convince our listeners why it is not so bad.
Well, I don't think my role is to convince people that the Biden administration isn't so bad. I just think that we have to take a much more practical look at things and ask ourselves, okay, what are our disagreements going to be, and how do we make sure that those disagreements don't become another Obama administration? So I think that we have to highlight the good things first, which is that there's always been good communication between Vice President Biden and Prime Minister Netanyahu. They have a long-standing relationship, and it's a very honest relationship. They're able to talk to each other honestly. It won't be as contentious as it was between Barack Obama and Prime Minister Netanyahu. Vice President Biden is much more open, much more honest, and much warmer to the state of Israel. He cares about the state of Israel. He describes himself as a Zionist. That is not something you would ever hear coming out of President Obama's mouth, and that's very telling. That he considers himself a Zionist, he considers himself a friend of the state of Israel. That's first of all. Second of all, it's important to note that Vice President Biden considers it very important that Israel be safe and secure. So things like the Iron Dome, which the Obama administration funded and the Bush administration wouldn't. So you have Arrow 3 and you have David Sling. These are all new technologies, the F-35, the F-22s. These are all things that we can continue to look forward to getting from the Obama administration. There's going to be disagreements on Iran, and there will be disagreements on how to deal with the Palestinians and settlements for sure. I'm a settler and very proud of that and want more growth here. And I am concerned that will there be further growth, or will the Biden administration pressure Israel to not allow building here? But those are disagreements that we've had with previous administrations, both friendly and unfriendly. And I think that's par for the course and things that we're used to. The Trump administration is not the norm. We never thought that it would become the new norm. That was 4 years of where support was given to us. Basically, whatever we asked for, we got from the Trump administration. We're not going to get that from the Biden administration, but we never got that before from the Bush administration that was friendly towards Israel, or a Clinton administration, and the Republican administrations before that, the Bush 1 and Reagan were not that friendly towards us. So this is par for the course, and I don't think it's the end of the world. I think we just have to learn how to deal with it practically and keep up the warm relationship. I think we do ourselves a disservice by saying that the Biden administration is going to be horrible. I think that's not fair to the Biden administration, and I think it doesn't help us and doesn't put us in a good position when we start coming out like that.
But, many people believe that Biden, being his age and his mental capacities today, they don't have much trust. They think that he's basically just a hand puppet with someone else up the sleeve there controlling him, and they say it's the radical left. You've got Harris, who's behind him. They're already talking. It's one of our listeners right now is messaging us saying that they're already talking about the 25th Amendment to be able to oust him and then perhaps put in Harris. And she's one of the most progressive people that we know.
Yeah, so I think that it's kind of comical how people are so willing to diagnose Vice President Biden from afar. I don't know. I'm not trained to do that, and I think that we sort of live in this movie of the 25th Amendment. They did it to President Trump, and they said that his cabinet was going to pull the 25th Amendment on him, and now they're saying it about Vice President Biden. I wish him the best of health, and I hope that nothing ever happens to him. And I think that anybody that does promote these theories has some serious issues to deal with about diagnosing elderly from afar and elderly abuse. But it is true that Senator Harris was the most progressive member of the Senate, but she was also one of Israel's best friends in the Senate on the Democratic side. Just because you're progressive doesn't mean you're anti-Israel. I encourage everybody to look at a new congressman who's next to AOC named Richie Torres, who's as progressive as they come. He's an African-American gay man, while at the same time is also one of the most pro-Israel incoming freshmen in Congress. Progressive doesn't mean that you're anti-Israel. A lot of progressives, unfortunately, are anti-Israel. But if you look at Senator Harris's record on Israel, it is not AOC or Ilhan Omar or any of these people that we look at and shudder. She's been a friend to Israel. I remember the first time I ever heard her speak was at the APAC Policy Conference to 2,500 students, and just being mesmerized by how pro-Israel she was. The people that I know in California that know her personally say that she's a dedicated friend to Israel. I think that she's gotten painted, unfortunately, with this red mark of being anti-Israel because she's progressive. But I don't think that follows through if you look at her record on Israel.
I don't have time to rebuttal that. Just saying that people who support the Palestinian Authority, the PLO, which is a terrorist organization, it doesn't seem like a friend to Israel to me. But okay, I'm listening. And you also said that he's empathetic. We have about 10 seconds. Talk about that.
Okay, he is empathetic. Read his book on his son. But President Trump offered the PLO $50 billion. So I'm not so sure we should say that people that support the PLO and the Palestinian Authority aren't our friends. That's not a good metric.
Okay, and he did that in a deal, assuming that there would be peace. But okay, I accept that. Very good. I have to have you back on the show again because you really do give a different perspective, and I always like to see what the other side says, so we can learn. And I think that you have a lot of value to what you've said. So thank you so much for being with us, Rabbi Uri Pilichowski. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.